Wan'Dale Robinson. Let's move into some must-add wide receivers now for Week 8 fantasy football. So Wan'Dale Robinson is the first name we'll talk about here. There's a few intriguing options that could have strong flex capabilities depending on your league formats here in the coming weeks. Starting out with Wan'Dale here at 29% rostership. Again, I do get these numbers from Yahoo Fantasy. To refresh, I just think that their rostership numbers are a bit more accurate in terms of reflecting what the reality of the situation should be across league formats. I feel that when looking at ESPN's numbers, they're always a bit low for my taste. So we use Yahoo here for this video, this format. Wan'Dale, what I like about him is the fact that his slot role provides the opportunity to lead this team in receiving volume on a week-to-week basis, and he is a playmaker. So while he doesn't have, the natural physical gifts that every player might have from a bodily composition standpoint, the fact that he is a much smaller player, I believe he's 5'8", 5'9", and not a 6'4" DK Metcalf running around out there. I get it that there is a limitation in terms of his contested catch win rate that he can ultimately have and stuff like that. But getting him quick off the line of scrimmage, and Brian Dable has so far done a pretty good job in spurts where Wan'Dale started to increase his playing time of getting him out in space, gave him the football in three-step drop situations for Daniel Jones, easy throws, pitch and catch, all that stuff. He had 8 targets this week, caught 6 of them. He's been, turning my head a little bit the last couple of weeks here and making me consider the fact that he could be the most fantasy viable wide receiver in this Giants offense. Now, Darius Slayton deserves some respect as well. He's been a playmaker the last couple of games out here, especially it was the Packer game. He did very well, and then he had a touchdown again this week in an upset over the Jacksonville Jaguars. So there's a lot of room for opportunity here. I think that at the end of the day, this is a very low-end passing offense. I think that there is, of course, a hard-capped ceiling here, but there's no reason in a PPR format where if him and Daniel Jones, like I talked about, are playing pitch and catch, that if you have, let's say that his rostership should be after this week somewhere between 45 and 50%, that's, a lot of up to 21% of availability for Wan'Dale Robinson in terms of the league formats I actually expect to really want to go out there and target him. So I like this pickup. I think there's some usage here that's interesting. Parris Campbell moving into the Indianapolis Colts now, widely available at 4%. I think I actually, apologize for this here. I think I did a little bit of disservice to Parris Campbell this past week and a half maybe or so, getting really excited about Alec Pierce. Ever since the Thursday night game, it was an absolute, field goal riddled disaster between Denver and Indianapolis. I was really high on Alec Pierce. He's been making good plays. He's a really nice prospect coming out of Cincinnati from the 2022 draft class. But Parris Campbell has actually, analytically been on the same level, if not in some respects, a higher regard than what Alec Pierce has done lately, playing 100% of the snaps offensively. And being a guy who's out there seeing legitimate volume, playing in somewhat of a mixed role between getting in a big slot situation and sometimes lining up on the perimeter as well. He has good athletic measurables and traits. His one issue, and obviously he's a very solid player. He played for the University of Ohio State, so his one problem has been health and staying on the football field. And right now seems to be kind of that breakthrough moment where he's getting out there. He's making plays happen. He scored a touchdown this week, had 70 yards on 10 receptions, 12 targets, a season high. I'd have to go look back at his numbers. That could potentially be a career high as well. You like what you're seeing. And I think at the end of the day, again, this is more so a flex play. This is a rostership scenario for teams in deeper leagues, but the argument can be made if Alec Pierce or Parris Campbell are the more valuable players. Now, of course, Pierce's role long-term with this team is a lot more set in stone. I think that he's a player the organization views from a long-term perspective, as I said, in the higher overall valuation. But that doesn't mean that today, based on Matt Ryan, the current quarterback situation, and how this offensive dynamic is unfolding right now, that he can't get there and be, a guy that is a viable contributor going forward for the 2022 season in a vacuum. Mecole Hardman here, another player at 24% rostership who's very interesting to take a look at here. Wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, has 4 touchdowns, oddly enough, in his last 2 games, something that I never thought I'd be saying here. But he's put up really good numbers. He had 6 touches this week, 60 yards, so 10 yards a touch, rushing and receiving wise. He was involved in some sort of jet motion type play or jet sweep, whatever you want to call it. And he had 3 TDs this week out here in week 7 against the San Francisco 49ers. So is this guy Tyreek Hill? No, but he's very, very quick. There's a lot of flash and dash going on here. And he's a dynamic playmaker that ultimately, when he has the football in his hands, can make things happen and can have a really large impact on football games, can stretch the field vertically, runs, pretty solid routes as well. He's not Devontae Adams. He doesn't have the most elite footwork in the game. He's not making guys tip over in his route tree, but with Patrick Mahomes and what he brings to the table in terms of elevating others and being that guy that takes your offense to the next level, Mecole Hardman is someone that can benefit greatly from that, have his, production elevated as a result of being attached to Patrick Mahomes, and see a lot of positive externalities in that way. So Mecole Hardman, a receiver here. And then Marquise Goodwin, a longtime NFL veteran, actually did himself quite the eye-popping backflip in victory formation this week after Seattle took down the Chargers as underdogs. I believe that game is on the road as well this week, but the Chargers stadium for Rams and Chargers fans is, you can make the argument, do they even exist? Because it feels like that stadium constantly gets taken over by the crazed away crowd. So back to business here. Marquise Brown at 0% rostership. If you're playing in a deeper format, he's going to be available. He's going to be out there in your leagues. You can go target him here. The big kicker is not that Brown, I keep wanting to say, Brown, for whatever reason, Marquise Brown, Marquise Goodwin, I don't know. Sorry about that. But for Marquise Goodwin here, the kicker is not that he scored 2 touchdowns this week and then he was very productive in this game in a vacuum. It's that he did that with DK Metcalf being off the field, if that makes sense. So if you're unaware, DK suffered a knee injury. He was carted to the locker room. He was ruled out for the game almost immediately. Then they did x-rays on that knee. They came back negative. We don't really know what the situation is yet. He's going to have more testing, so probably an MRI. And obviously just, physical capabilities and stuff like that. But should DK miss time, Marquise Goodwin, who is a very, his reputation in the National Football League has always been kind of a big play vertical threat. If DK were to miss time, Marquise becomes a viable flex option again in 12+ man leagues, maybe even deeper than that, or leagues that have multiple flex positions, super deep benches, wherever the case might be. So keeping my eye on that situation for that fact and that reason alone. He caught 80% of his targets, 4 out of 5 here for 67 yards and 2 scores on the day. And then lastly here for wide receivers, Rondale Moore at 49% rostership. This is just the opportunity to be a number 2 wide receiver in this Cardinals offense. You're seeing Robbie Anderson enter into things here. A.J. Green seems to be entirely kind of just faded and washed out of this offense here. And then you've got Rondale and DeAndre Hopkins. Marquise Brown's going to be out for a while now. It sounds like at least 4 weeks. He's on the injured reserve, so he literally can't return until week 12. Could be longer than that. You've got a position where Rondale will be starting here in a slot role. Could see more volume head his direction for that reason, and elevate his role in this offense in terms of what that means for the rest of 2022. So he's a skillful playmaker. As always, he doesn't have the largest frame as well, so isn't going to be a beast in those contested catch situations, but does have some viability and utility in terms of what he brings to this team as an explosive pass catcher and a guy who in space is very good with his legs. Jared Goff here at 58%, getting into some streaming quarterback options for Week 8 fantasy football. He's rostered in 58% of formats, so not super widely available, but chances are after this week he will probably be dropped in a handful of leagues, so that rostership number might actually go down here.